Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today, and we're
matching.
And we're in a similar kind of color and tone. I see where you're coming from on that.
Robby's not a fan of me always saying that we're matching, but
well, you just say it every day. But today it's true, and we kind of have the blue Christmas tree decor.
Yeah, they do a quick zoom in, so we get a little bit of holiday cheer, and then it's like boom, get to the politics.
How much Christmas trees we got going on? Yeah, it's great.
Well, coming up on Rising, a Democratic senator has a message for his party if they want to perform well in the midterms.
Plus, President Trump designated Venezuela a foreign terrorist organization.
And White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles stunned the political world after Vanity Fair published some comments she made about Trump administration staff. But first, as always, Robby, what is on your radar today?
Well, Guan Heng is an amazing man. The 37-year-old former citizen and resident of China did something truly spectacular in his home country. He defied China's authoritarian government and documented the abuses of China's Uyghur Muslims. Of his own interest and volition, he downloaded satellite coordinates from Western sources where they believe the detention facilities, concentration camps, in truth, are located. He then traveled there, and he took pictures of the camps that the Chinese Communist Party claims do not exist. Then, this citizen journalist shared them with BuzzFeed News, which published an eye-opening series of articles about the internment of the Uyghurs. It was brave, incredibly brave, Guan Heng to do this. Documenting the atrocities of the world's most reckless tyrants is vital work, and it's extremely dangerous. Guan Heng knew his life would be in danger, and he would be swiftly apprehended by the authorities, questioned, detained, tortured, and possibly killed. And so he fled China, traveling to Ecuador and then eventually by boat to the United States. Yes, he did enter the country illegally. He then applied for asylum and obtained a work permit. He's been living quietly and working ever since then. But a few months ago, he was picked up and detained by U.S. immigration authorities. Now, after he admitted to them candidly that he had entered the country illegally. Now ICE is considering deporting him, either directly to China or to Uganda, where further deportation to China would be quite likely. We should not deport Guan Heng. We should commend him, and we should welcome him into the United States. As the Wall Street Journal writes, it's hard to imagine a stronger case for asylum. Is this the message the land of the free wants to send the world, that if you risk your life to expose human rights abuses and then risk it again to make it to America, the home of the brave will serve as the police force for the Chinese Communist Party? Really? And as the American Enterprise Institute's Kareem Rafai points out, we give China concession after concession. We flood them with our chips. Now we're set to deport Chinese dissidents back into the hands of Beijing. Are we in competition with China or unilateral surrender? Indeed, we cannot stand against global communism if we deport communism's foes back into the hands of the authoritarian communists. It's obvious. Now, it makes perfect sense to question various aspects of the U.S.'s immigration asylum process. I have no problem with that. Many Americans wonder why we are importing people who dislike this country and its values. Just because someone is a victim of tyranny or abuse does not automatically make them a sympathetic case for entry into America. Yeah, I understand all that. Sounds fine to me. I support vetting this category of immigration much, much, much more aggressively. But Guan Heng easily passes that test. I cannot imagine a more perfect example of someone who ought to be in this country, no matter how he came here. It's incumbent, thus, on Secretary of State Marco Rubio to consider the national security ramifications. The Trump administration has said that it recognizes the threat of a communist China and that it favors a realistic foreign policy that involves mitigating the harms associated with Chinese dominance. We need to know what China's up to. We need to encourage and support people like Guan Heng, not deliver them to their tormentors. That would be crazy. So I hope this case gets a lot of attention. I've seen people tweeting about it. The Wall Street Journal has done a lot of good work on it. Other outlets, mainstream outlets, are writing about it. This seems like the perfect case for an asylum. Someone who is going to face oppression in his home country, whose work was good and valuable for U.S. interests. We want to document and publicize China's atrocities and abuses and tyranny. He came here. He's working. He got a work permit. He's not bothering anyone, and what he did was great. It seems like that this should be a no-brainer that this person stays in the country. And if you think he's got to go, then I don't know. Then you're just for like mindlessly following the rules on the book without any kind of indicate. Then you really are the person who would have turned away, the Jews fleeing Nazi Germany and whatnot. I mean, come on, let's exercise some common sense. That's all I'm asking for. It's common sense that we should not deport this person.
I was happy that you picked this story because I think it's one of those examples. Sometimes people need like a visual example of what happens when our immigration policy is picking up way too many people that are actually contributing to our society in great ways. He's one example, and his case is slowly becoming more high profile. But like you said, he was documenting human rights atrocities that we should know about a nation that we truly don't have the best relationship with. To send him back to Uganda, the chances that he goes back to China are pretty obvious, and he's going to face persecution there because technically he's on the side of the U.S. by exposing it to U.S. outlets and not on the side of his home country. And then again, probably other human rights violations because China doesn't answer to pretty much anyone. But I think there is an overall consensus, and has been for the last few months, about how we approach immigration. I'm with you on the side that Biden didn't handle immigration well. And I think the American public is with the president on moving forward with new policy for immigration. But polls have shown us that they're not happy with how they're picking up, and people that have loud mouthpieces that have become, whether they want to or not, for the Republican Party, like Joe Rogan, have become mouthpieces for the way that we're doing immigration. It doesn't represent or reflect the way that the average American wants to see it done. And I noticed that there was news this week that the Department of Homeland Security is actually amending its immigration enforcement operations by moving away from raids, the ones that we were seeing in LA, targeting facilities where people were working, and looking to follow people that have committed serious offenses. And that's a News Nation report that they got found out about. And so if they are really changing policy, that means they're actually listening to the average American that says, hey, this is going too far. Somebody like a person that provides intel to the American public is not someone that we want to send out of the country. Somebody that's working on farms across Pennsylvania that's helping our economy is not something that we want, someone that we want to deport. We want to first go after the criminals. And I think that was the part of the campaign strategy wholly of the president. And he can continue to do that because most bipartisan support is right there, where criminals should be out of this country, not people who actually contribute to our well-being and knowledge.
Right. And one of the things that excuse me, the promises that Trump made and the reason people voted for him is the concern about totalitarian communist China. I mean, this is a very dangerous country that's government is, in my view, responsible for the pandemic. In the very least, did not share intelligence with us early on to mitigate their own involvement. And so we had a worse pandemic because they are a closed, not transparent society. They still won't tell us exactly what they know about whether it actually came from a lab or from the wet market. They're bad actors on the global stage. So we should reward transparency. We should reward whistleblowers within their country. Like, that's a good thing. We want to encourage people to engage, because I don't want to have World War III with China. I don't want to fight them. I don't want to send the army. I don't want to, we send, maybe we have spies. I have no idea if we have spies, but that's dangerous work. But if their own citizens are going to stand up to their abuses and document the bad things they're doing, and then share them with BuzzFeed got the photos in this case, and they were in videos, and they were very useful for that journalistic project. They're going to do that, and then they come here. Okay, we gotta say, yeah, that's a great asylum case. Please stay. I think in this case, he took a boat from Ecuador to get here. He bought a boat, didn't know how to. He got himself here. That's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
You're supposed to turn yourself over. Submitted a port of entry, I think, to do this the proper way. Didn't do that. Whatever. Come on, people. You gotta have a little bit of common sense.
And then, but I wonder if they cave a little bit. I know we have to go, but like, what happens then? It's like, okay, well, now for the people that are strict, there are people that are part of the MAGA base that are strict. Not one immigrant should be here illegally. Yeah. So then how do you answer to that part of your party?
Yeah, that's silly, and we're not going to do that. We can't send them all back.
President Trump appears to be escalating tensions with Venezuela. We're going to talk about that next. A major escalation in the Trump administration's campaign against Venezuela Tuesday, the president placing a blockade on all sanctioned oil tankers exiting the South American country, and appears to be directly targeting the regime of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The president posted on Truth Social, Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before until such a time as they return to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets they previously stole from us. He continued in part, the illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves, drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping. For the theft of our assets and many other reasons, the Venezuelan regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization.
Just a week ago, the U.S. seized an oil tanker off the Venezuelan coast, alleging it was being used to transport sanctioned oil from the South American country and from Iran. Senator Lindsey applauded the move by the president, writing in part on X, "Spot on, Mr. President. The Maduro regime has wreaked havoc on our nation and our people, the people of Venezuela and the region. He associates with terrorist regimes like Hezbollah, poisons America through the drug trade, and his demise is long overdue. If he's not a terrorist, I don't know who would be." Graham capped his post with, quote, "Finish him off." But some on both sides are warning against what they see as regime change. Representative Thomas Massie wrote in his own post, "I will vote to keep our forces out of Venezuela. Regime change abroad isn't America first, and it won't make America great again." And Mehdi Hassan echoed that, writing, "Not just deranged, but criminal. Venezuela could be the next Iraq." But Republican Senator Rick Scott pushed back on that idea. Take a listen.
It's not regime change. He's not the president of Venezuela. He stole the last election. He lost it. It was proven he lost the last election. He's an indicted drug trafficker. He needs to be imprisoned in the United States. And what the president is doing exactly what he should be doing, stopping these drugs from killing my kids and my grandkids.
Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio were on Capitol Hill yesterday to brief Congress on the ongoing strikes on vessels off the Venezuelan coast. The latest of those strikes was on Monday, targeting 3 separate boats and killing 8 people. Rubio and Hegseth defended the strikes yesterday following that briefing. Let's take a listen.
This has been a highly successful mission that's ongoing and continued, and we're pleased to be here today to update Congress on how that's developing and how that's moving forward.
It is the 22nd bipartisan briefing we've had on a highly successful mission to counter designated terrorist organizations, cartels, bringing weapons meaning drugs, to the American people and poisoning the American people for far too long. So we're proud of what we're doing, able to lay it out very directly to these senators and soon to the House.
They also addressed the September boat attack that has been under major scrutiny following several reports that Hegseth ordered a second strike to kill survivors clinging to the side of the burning boat. Despite Trump saying in the past he had, quote, no problem releasing full unedited video of the strike, Hegseth walked that back on Tuesday.
We're also going to tomorrow allow the HASC and SASC to see the unedited video of the September 2nd, alongside with Admiral Bradley, who has done a fantastic job, has made all the right calls, and we're glad he'll be there to do it. But in keeping with long-standing Department of War policy, Department of Defense policy, of course we're not going to release a top-secret, full, unedited video of that to the general public. HASC and SASC and appropriate committees will see it, but not the general public.
A lot of senators want to see the full video. Even Lindsey Graham, I believe, came out and said, just release the full video. And perhaps not to the American public, but since the American public feels involved because they now understand that Congress has been isolated out of many of the decisions when it comes down to how to deal with Venezuela, how to attack these boats that we've been attacking, and whether it counts as like narcotics or terrorism missions, and the way that the president used a word change to, authenticate some of his decisions. It just makes people wonder. And so, Congress has a responsibility to answer to the people that voted them in. And so they're asking the right questions. And I know that you get annoyed with the nuance of the second strike and the people hanging. If they were going to kill the first time and people were being killed and there was potentially the Hills reporting drugs on that boat, it still is just the transparency piece. People just want transparency because there are examples. That's just one case where people are calling for answers. But there's been many instances where even leaders like of other nations are taking in some people that have been found off the shores and not understanding what the next steps are with these people, or parents from Trinidad and Tobago saying their son was on one of these boats and not a criminal. And again, it becomes hearsay when really Congress moving forward and telling us what we're getting involved in would be the clear, transparent path to make sure that everybody understands. Like, are we about to go to war? Even tonight, we have a 9 p.m. state address that the president is doing to the nation. Like, I know people, I can't be the only one wondering what he has to say. And my first thought is that it goes towards this incident, which I hope it doesn't, because, we're going into the holidays and the America First president surely should not be escalating this situation.
If he wants to escalate, I'm going to say, sound like a broken record here. If he wants to escalate, he has to bring it to Congress and they got to vote. That's the main thing here. In terms of the video footage of the strike, I would be more comfortable having Congress be the only ones see it if Congress was capable of exercising any effective oversight and accountability of the executive branch at this point. Since they're just going along with whatever, well then yes, then the American people should see it. I know that would be unusual, but I don't see what other choice we have. If Congress isn't going to do its job and provide meaningful oversight, then the people should see it. So that's that issue. The other issue is, so Rick Scott says there, well, it's not regime change because Maduro's regime is illegitimate because he stole the election. That's true. Juan Guaido won that election. Yes, he is not the legitimate leader of Venezuela, but he is the effective leader of Venezuela. Right. He exercises control over the military. He is, like, in a moral sense, no tyrant is the legitimate leader of their country. You know, Kim Jong-un is not the legitimate leader of North Korea because he's an evil person, but he is the leader. So it's not. So that's a stupid little rhetorical thing Rick Scott was doing there. It would still be regime change because that is the regime that is in power. It's not the regime that should be in power. It doesn't, in like a John Locke sense, have the consent of the governed, you know, to rule. But they are still. Nicolas Maduro is still ruling, and to take him out would be regime change. And if they want to do it, they should make that case to Congress, and then we'll see it, and then maybe people will vote for it. Thomas Massie said he's not going to vote for it no matter what because it's not America First. Absolutely fine, that's his prerogative. But maybe others would be persuaded, but they're not making that case, and they're not providing any transparency about it.
Well, people are probably looking at the recent history and the recent things that the president has distanced himself from intentionally, which was decisions that were made around Afghanistan, Iraq, things that he says that his presidency and his administration disagree with the way they were handled from start to finish. Mm-hmm. And so regime change was the core essence of a lot of what happened there. And then failure on the back end when you see that the Taliban is back in control in Afghanistan, when you see that not much changes in a lot of these nations that we go in and try to be the hero of because we think that democracy should prevail. Yeah, exactly. We're spending a ton of money, you know, we're spending a ton of resources. And it's just, to me, even if there's a line down the road where people say this is an issue that we need to heavily focus on, I think that the American people overwhelmingly have been saying they really want the president to focus on what's happening right here in this country because people can't even think about how, and not that two things can't happen at once, but people can't think about how to move forward with their grocery bill or things like that when we're talking about international wars that nobody wants to be involved with. And this is just people saying that they specifically don't want the same type of presidency that they had under George W. Bush.
And if this announcement tonight is about that, then it is a distraction. Because they can do domestic policy and foreign policy at the same time. It is a little silly to be like focused on the wrong thing. But you don't do a televised address that everyone pays attention to all the time. That is a choice then what you're going to focus on. And you can only do so many of those before we're like, okay, you're just seeking attention. Right. So that should be.
Well, he also said he's going to tout his accomplishments from this year. That's what Caroline Levitt said. So we'll see about all those accomplishments we hear about tonight.
Bombshell documents show the FBI argued it did not have probable cause in raiding Mar-A-Lago. Don't go anywhere. Bombshell new documents show that the FBI argued they did not have probable cause to raid President Trump's Mar-A-Lago home back in August of 2022. You may remember that raid was to recover classified documents from the first Trump administration that were allegedly improperly taken from the White House and stored at Trump's Florida home.
Now, newly released documents show some in the Bureau felt they didn't have grounds for a search warrant, despite reportedly spending 6 weeks trying to establish that they did. One official going so far as to write, quote, absent a witness coming forward with recent information about classified documents on site, at what point is it fair to table this? But according to these documents, the Biden DOJ went ahead with the raid anyway, despite the objections. George Toscas, an attorney with the DOJ's National Security Division, was reportedly one of the several officials who seemingly pressured the Bureau to go ahead with the recovery operation, with Toscas, according to court documents, saying in a phone call that, quote, frankly, didn't give a damn about the optics of the raid.
Those new documents were made public by Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Chuck Grassley on Tuesday, calling them proof of a miscarriage of justice. President Trump agreed on Truth Social, writing, unreasonable search and seizure. That was the FBI's criminal raid on Mar-A-Lago. This can never be allowed to happen again. That investigation was one of the several under the purview of Special Counsel Jack Smith, who's been a frequent target of criticism from Trump. Smith is set to testify before Congress today. Man, that is
ridiculous.
What do you mean ridiculous?
It's ridiculous, like that. This is like this proof that this is just fabricated and to continue to go forward. I know you always argue that Democrats did this first, and for some reason, I mean, for many times I thought it was warranted. In this case, with classified documents, to know that people were just sitting up there like, no proof, keep it going. That's ridiculous to me and a waste of time. But I also thought...
I think it's ridiculous that they decided to raid the president's office when there was internal disagreement about whether there was enough evidence to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you in that ridiculous sense. I also, there was many things over that course of time that I thought were creating the narrative of this witch hunt, which propelled the president and garnered his base in a way that completely was a fail. And Democrats could have used their time more wisely during that whole time. And so when I think about all the legal proceedings and then the optics of being in the news business and probably everybody at home watching the news, seeing the president's home raided and facilities
you're going to do that, you better have all your ducks in a row. So the idea that somebody internally was saying, I'm not sure we really have enough evidence, there was like, I don't give a damn, do it anyway. Okay, this is the president of the United States.
That's the ridiculous that I mean.
This is gonna, yeah, it's ridiculous that they didn't consider. Yeah, he shouldn't be treated differently. I get that, but the level of and that was a motivating factor in actually returning him to power.
Right.
Because some Republicans, some conservatives who are ready to let Trump go were like, nope, we can't stand for this. They're trying to perp walk him. Can't let it go.
That was where we talked about yesterday how you said, I think you said 30% of people that are Republican that voted for Trump are like, I don't care what he says, like it's more about the policy part. That was where that 30% who was on the fence and maybe was for somebody like Nikki Haley, or they circled back and was like, no, this is ridiculous, in the same way that I was referring to the ridiculous earlier. And they're like, we just have to stand behind the candidate because obviously now it does look like a witch hunt. And there were many things that the president did that required him to be scrutinized and criticized, which obviously I have no qualms about doing. But this, to have a raid, I assume that they had all the information that they need to raid and over the documents. But then to see it fall flat, you start to lose faith that there was evidence. And then to have this article come out, you're like, okay. You know, this is exactly why the American public is frustrated
100%
with Congress and with
100%.
Our government. Because, again, you're spending time trying to persecute your enemies, political enemies, and nobody wants to do that. And so that's why I always ask when the buck's going to stop.
And I would say the same thing if it was someone other than Trump. I don't think law enforcement should conduct raids unless it's really clear and the evidence is really compelling, because I don't like, citizens being, I want people's rights respected, and they gotta go through the steps, even if they're pretty sure. They gotta do it properly, or we're just living in a banana republic where, the government can not even the leader of the government, the bureaucrats, the faceless bureaucrats, can just come after everyone. That's not good. Not good at all.
Up next, a Democratic senator has a message for his party if they want to succeed in the midterms. Stick around for my lens.
All right, Lindsey, what's on your lens today?
Let's get to it. So Democrats are feeling something they haven't felt in a while: momentum. After a string of recent wins, there's a real belief inside the party that flipping the House next year is a possibility. Now, anti-Trump anger is motivating voters, and a renewed focus on affordability is finally cutting through. But energy alone does not win elections. Clarity does. Even some Democrats are saying the quiet part out loud. Senator Chris Coons, a close ally of President Biden, argues the party needs to rethink how it talks to voters and stop lecturing them. He says Democrats need to listen and actually solve problems in ways people feel in their everyday lives. As he put it, quote, stop telling Americans how to be and what to feel and believe. He added that leaders, quote, need to listen and focus on helping Americans achieve financial security and live the American dream. He went on to say, quote, we have to get back to the values and ideas that draw people to be Democrats to begin with. Coons shared those views in an essay published in Democracy, the Journal of Ideas, and his background matters here. Both of Coons' parents were Republicans. He even helped found the Amherst College Republicans. His argument is simple and familiar. To win again, Democrats need to offer voters a concise, accessible framework rooted in opportunity, security, and justice that includes affordable housing, quality education, and jobs everywhere, not just in these coastal bubbles. Former President Barack Obama echoed a similar message this week. Speaking to House Democrats in Los Angeles, he warned lawmakers not to get trapped in the ideological food fights as they try to win back the House. According to ABC News, Obama told Democrats to focus on winning first and sort out these internal differences later. According to transcript obtained by ABC News, he said, quote, Because I promise when that gets done, we have enormous talent, and we are then going to be in a position, as the next presidential campaign ramps up, to sort through some of the differences. He added that the party's differences aren't that big, and that social media often magnifies them. The voters seem open to this moment. According to a November poll, a majority of voters say they would rather elect a Democrat candidate if the midterms were held today. The poll found that 55% would choose a Democrat compared to 41% for a Republican. That shift is not accidental. Trump ran on lowering prices, and now months into his term, prices are still rising. Grocery costs more, electric bills are up. His approval rating has dropped to 36%, with many voters saying his policies are making everything more expensive. Even voters focused on the economy think he's not doing enough to fix it. The reality is this: there are fewer competitive House seats than there were back in 2018. The low-hanging fruit is gone. A wave is harder to build when the map is tighter. That means Democrats cannot afford vague messages or mid-campaign pivots. Voters want specifics. They want to know what Democrats are fighting for and how it helps them right now. The path forward is not louder rhetoric. It's a clear economic message focused on affordability, delivered consistently, and followed by results. Momentum opens the door, sure. Message decides whether Democrats walk through it.
Well, look, I mean, I agree that that's all valid and messaging is important, and Democrats, I concede, have an opportunity because things are not going as well for Republicans as they would have liked. Trump has not improved the economy sufficiently, in my view, and I again point to policies, tariffs, and other things that have kept prices higher than they should be. But the Democrats they are split on a lot of issues, like specific issues. I mean, should Democrats run on Medicare for all? Should they run on Bernie Sanders, I just saw, announced that he favors a moratorium on all new data centers. He doesn't want to build any new data centers because he thinks AI is growing, that sector is growing too quickly, and democracy needs time to catch up. No more data centers. China's not doing a moratorium on data centers, but we're going to do a moratorium on data centers. Great idea. That is, in my view, that's bad. Is that what Democrats are going to run on? Halting all progress? Is that what they're like? We got to figure out, are Democrats going to go the Bernie Sanders populist, hardcore left thing on specific issues like that, or should they not? Or are they going to do a neoliberalism that I think is better policies, but is clearly not popular when Democrats do it?
So when it comes down to MAGA and then the wider Republican Party, you always say that they have a lot of disagreements. That's what makes MAGA beautiful, right? Yeah. And so that's always your argument about how many, when you have Marjorie Taylor Greene doing the most. And so I think that Democrats have to have the same leeway because some of them are really policy-based within the Republican Party. It's like what President Trump is doing does not align with the historical Republican behavior that still exists within the party, right? You call a lot of people rhinos that are traditional Republicans. They still get your vote to get Trump in office. And so to me, I think that the Democrats don't have to decide. That's what Obama's point was. Just because Mamdani's running, just because Mamdani's running doesn't mean that you have to say, oh, we're all Mamdani. Like, no, that works for New York. Well, and we could pick out of the policies that work for the broader country federally and say, oh, that makes sense. But not everything he says makes sense for the whole country. It makes sense
what are the policies of the national candidate is what I'm wondering. With Trump, it's a little bit different. Man, there's a lot of emergency vehicles outside our windows today. I hope everything's all right. With Trump, it's different because he has such power over the Republican Party, and it's a personality-based thing, not a policy-based thing. So the policy is just whatever he says it is, and it doesn't have to be internal. It can be more conservative on something. He is much more conservative on immigration. It can be less conservative on other things. He cares less about entitlements than a previous generation of Republicans did. He doesn't want to privatize Social Security and cut Medicare, and sadly, because I think those would be great things to do, privatize that. He doesn't want to do it, so he's less conservative on that. It doesn't have to be ideologically consistent for him. It's just about Trump and his personality. The Democrats don't have someone. They don't even have an Obama-like figure with a fairly compelling personality who could then pick whatever policies he wants for the most part because he's popular. They don't have someone like that.
Right, because they're doing they have to completely
have
do
to
a rebirth.
So
because,
they have to
well,
choose
that's going to
candidates.
come with time, I think, in the next election. But since we're talking about the midterms, I don't think that these candidates in the midterms that are obligated to represent their districts and their states and their places, they need to focus on what policies overall matter. And that's kind of what Obama's point
I'm
was.
just curious
is
to
that,
know.
yeah, no, I would like to too.
I'd like to know
I think
which
when the
way they're gonna
midterms
go.
are done, and you saw that interview with Pelosi yesterday, she was very confident, in your words, overly confident about the winning. But it's not for every candidate. If you look at Abigail Spanberger, she's a great example. She didn't lean into the Mamdani policy. She also didn't lean into the Trump bashing. She led in with eager talk about the struggling systems that are not working within Virginia and saying, listen, we're not going to attack President Donald Trump and what he maybe has done in the DMV area. We're going to talk about how people can get more money in their pockets. And that was a winning message. So I think if Democrats focus on the actual people that they might have, quote unquote, forgot about in the last few elections, and not about how bad President Trump is, because that's not a winning message anymore.
I guess I would just like
That
to
would be-
calibrate my own personal level of alarm. You're right. If Democrats are running, it's Abigail Spanbergerism, then I would not be particularly alarmed. If it's halt all new technological innovation because I don't like it, Bernie Sanders style stuff, I think that's going to be catastrophic for our country, for our competition with China, for our leadership on the global stage, and then my hair will be on fire.
Well, there's going to be some young people that come into the Democratic Party slowly but surely that have more open-minded views about technology, AI, all the things that you are.
I don't know that that comes from Bernie Sanders being old. I think that comes from him being a hardcore leftist. Mamdani's also a hardcore leftist. Maybe he can say.
Mamdani seems like the balance. Maybe I'd like to. I mean,
a balance.
A balance between Bernie Sanders and being younger. You know what I mean? Maybe he's more open to
A
he used
balance
social
between
media in a
wokeism
way.
and socialism.
I'm
A
not-
balance between economic extremism and Islamic extremism. No, I'm kidding. I don't think that he's an Islamic extremist.
Thank you for correcting
I think that he is an economic extremist, and that is disqualifying on its own, and has some extreme ideas about the police. But anyway, next up, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles was surprisingly candid, maybe not so surprising, but she was candid about White House staff in a series of interviews with Vanity Fair. We'll discuss. Stay with us.
White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles has the spotlight on her as a series of interviews she did with Vanity Fair magazine were published on Tuesday.
Wiles made some notable claims about President Trump throughout the first year of his second term and discussed key figures in his administration, like Vice President J.D. Vance and Elon Musk. Now she's calling the whole article a hit piece, and other members of Trump's cabinet are coming to her defense. One of the most viral questions was in this excerpt, where Wiles said that Trump has an alcoholic's personality. Quote, he operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do.
Trump responded to that quote in a phone call with the New York Post, defending Wiles' assessment. He says one of his reasons for not drinking alcohol is that he feels like he would have a good chance of becoming an alcoholic if he did.
Wiles also spent time talking about billionaire Elon Musk's role within the Department of Government Efficiency. Wiles said of Musk, he's a complete solo actor. The challenge with Elon is keeping up with him. He's an avowed ketamine user, and he sleeps in a sleeping bag in the executive office building.
Other notable excerpts included Wiles describing Vice President J.D. Vance as a, quote, conspiracy theorist, and saying Attorney General Pam Bondi, quote, completely whiffed in her handling of the Epstein files. The interviews attracted a lot of attention on social media when they were published, and Wiles quickly responded. She wrote on X in part, quote, the article published early this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I said and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading it that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team.
As the day went on, many of Trump's top officials put out similar statements in support of Wiles. Pam Bondi, for example, wrote, my dear friend Susie Wiles fights every day to advance President Trump's agenda. She does so with grace, loyalty, and historic effectiveness. Any attempt to divide this administration will fail. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the Chief of Staff Susie Wiles has helped President Trump achieve the most successful first 11 months in office of any president in American history. President Trump has no greater or more loyal advisor than Susie. The entire administration is grateful for her steady leadership and united fully behind her. So this was interesting. This is a long Vanity Fair article. 11 different interviews with Susie Wiles where she's pretty frank about her views on all these figures. She's now saying she was kind of misconstrued. Context is missing. I accept that context was missing. And some of these have even been spun in weird ways because she called J.D. Vance a conspiracy theorist, but she didn't actually mean that negatively if you examine the context. What she was saying, she just used the wrong word. What she was saying is that J.D. Vance had a sincere interest in the Jeffrey Epstein story from the start. He was interested in this quote-unquote conspiracy theory that's not actually a conspiracy theory, and he understood it better than, for instance, Pam Bondi, who came to it late and then got it wrong. She did call out Elon Musk's ketamine use, something I think he said
Denied.
Acknowledged using it, but is not a frequent user of it.
Yeah.
I suspect he is a frequent user of it, and it explains his antics, as I've said many times. But Trump didn't mind the alcoholic line. I don't know. Vanity Fair was trying to make it seem bad, but she was saying positive things for the most part about all these officials, and she was speaking honestly. And maybe people actually, well, I'm of two minds. On one hand, why they thought Vanity Fair was going to make them try to look good. Vanity Fair is hostile liberal media. What are you doing, people? On one hand. On the other hand, they don't really care. So I guess why should I?
My biggest thing is the pictures that were associated with this piece.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Those pictures were absurd. Even for somebody who is very critical of the administration, those pictures were
People were really calling
wild.
the Caroline Leavitt one.
Yeah, it was
as
like
bad.
this. It was like only this. It was like this close zoomed in.
Yeah,
It was
I didn't
like,
see that one right off the bat. I saw a different one of her that I thought was a perfectly good photo. So then I was like, what are you talking about? And then I saw
Yeah,
the
it's
zoomed
not a
in
good
one. It
picture.
was mean. I know. They didn't get the Nick Fuentes treatment. Remember they made him
look like a hero.
very handsome.
No, that was the New York Times, right? That made him look big, and I don't think it was
That was
Vanity
the time.
Fair.
Oh, you're right.
But either way, I think with the article, like, so J.D. Vance responded. He said, yeah, I am a conspiracy theorist. Like, when people said kids need to wear masks, I knew that when they turn out to be true, I do go with my thoughts of mine. So I think it's interesting how the entire administration immediately, like, seemed like they didn't even have to get on a phone call. They're like, press the button or text message, lockstep. And everyone was like, no, she's good. We're not letting her go. We're not going to be firing Susie Wiles. Nothing like that's happening. And like you said, the article is interesting. To talk to somebody who's done pieces like this on chief of staffs for years, you kind of should know what to expect if you did any research, is that he's just going to tell the story to the best of his ability over many interviews. I believe that her father, she said, was an alcoholic, so she's comparing Trump's personality to the fact that when they want something to get something done, they keep pushing to get it done.
She's saying he has
but it's still not a good
mania about him.
Yeah, but it's still not a good comparison. Like, I'm sure that's not the best thing about her father, that he was an alcoholic. So, you know, like, to say that, she just picks interesting words to describe
I know,
people.
but she talked for 11 hours to this guy. So maybe the context was fully explained and he just took that. I mean, if you talk to someone for 11 hours, trust me, you eventually get less cautious in what you say. This is why the police do so well in long and form interrogations. They always get the person to eventually confess because you just want to get out of that room.
Right.
I've
But that's
been
like
interviewed.
unwillingly when you're like under investigation from police and then willingly doing an interview at Vanity Fair. It's like no one's holding the lady hostage to tell all this stuff.
It feels like it can. I've been interviewed at great length before, even as an expert on speech issues, and by the end at great length, and by the end of the interview, which I had agreed to do willingly, I was like, okay, what do I gotta say to get this done?
Okay.
I gotta get out of here. I got places to be. I feel like I've been in this room my whole life. Yes. And then you start saying more outlandish things because you just get less precise in your language over time.
So what would
It happens on our show. I'm very careful with our words at the beginning. By the end
by
of
the
show,
F-block, you're
Lindsey, you raging liberal, you crazy person. Because I'm just, I'm.
Or you just say, I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point for Vanity Fair then? So they make the administration look bad, look chaotic. And
I don't even think they made it look bad or chaotic, honestly.
So what's they're just
It is
chaotic.
chaotic. I don't know that it's bad.
And is there not some truth in the fact of that this administration is a little more chaotic than historic administrations that at least we've understood, because the transparency maybe that you argue that they have,
a lot of
extremely
the people involved
colorful.
in the administration were picked because they're colorful television personalities. So many of them come from Fox News itself. Sean Duffy, Pete Hegseth, even someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who comes from politics, has been better known to conservatives for appearing on Fox, and so on. And so there's so many other examples.
Right. So that's what I mean. This administration is starting with the president, who is the most probably, I would say, over-the-top president, to say it lightly, that we've seen in our generations, as far as just like saying things without any planning and coordination, just
I
kind of
like
saying
that
whatever's on
she
his
kind of
mind.
just spoke her mind. Oh yeah, Elon Musk is a what would she call him? An odd duck. Because he clearly is an odd duck.
And
You love him or hate him, he is very, very eccentric.
I get a vibe from Susie Wiles and from Trump's relationship.
I like how
she's not a
plain-spoken she
person
was.
that Trump is going to disregard in any big way. I think that he trusts her to put her in that position very deeply, and I don't think that even with a rift that might go public, there's some people that, there might be, like Kash Patel, people are like, oh, he might be getting fired. People don't know. I don't know if Trump really loves him to the end of time. I think Susie Wiles, she's pretty much here to stay, and there's nothing that an article or anything that she says can do.
Well, and if we want to
briefly,
if we briefly touch on Paul, she did signal internal disagreement that she had and others had on some of the key policies. She thinks the deportations have gone a little bit far. She thinks, she says there was massive internal disagreement over the tariff policy, and that she argued for pausing implementation of it because she thought it was going to be a bad idea. But she basically said, if it's a tie, if we all kind of internally disagree, Trump's he's the president, he gets his say. So I thought that was interesting, that behind the closed doors they do debate, they do discuss some of these policies.
Honestly, now the president, if that's the case and she's being transparent about that, then heavy's the head that wears the crown. So now, if these tariff policies, if that's the one example that you're bringing up, go as poorly as people foresee that they'll go, even though President Trump's idea is that we'll have less foreign dependency and it'll all work out. But if it goes the way that obviously Susie Wiles and some other people that were the half that agree with most Americans goes, then the president has to take all the blame for that. Yeah. It's not like his administration. It's not like anybody was advising him. He made the final call. She said so. And so if things go bad and poorly and people still are in year 2, and the economy is looking similar to right now, we know exactly who to point the finger at.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think if Trump had listened, based on what she said, I think if Trump had followed Susie Wiles' policies exactly, I think he'd be in better shape, because she seems to, I think she would have gone less hard on the tariffs, and still done some trade things, still done a lot of immigration stuff, but just got eased up a little bit, and that would have been
I still would feel like my friend is being a little shady, going on there and saying, well, I picked the better out. Like, if it goes better to not have done tariffs, and she said that in an interview, I'd be like, why'd you do that to me? We're supposed to be close friends. So, I don't know. Up next, FBI Director Kash Patel is getting flamed for doing an interview with Katie Miller alongside his girlfriend. We'll be right back after this. FBI Director Kash Patel is facing heat for doing an interview with Katie Miller alongside girlfriend Alexis Wilkins, while the Brown University shooter is still on the loose.
Miller, wife of senior Trump aide Stephen Miller, teased the release of the episode on Monday, writing on X, the love story that the FBI director and Alexis Wilkins, is she from Israel? How do they make long distance work? When is the engagement?
We are so excited to be joined by Kash and his beautiful girlfriend, Alexis. So I just want to clarify, you're not Jewish.
I'm not.
You're not from Israel.
No.
So how did we get to, are you a Mossad agent?
That's a great question.
Where's her ring? Just to clarify, how often has he traveled to see you since January 20th?
In the same tweet thread, Miller clarified that the interview was taped prior to Sunday. Brown University incident was reported around 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. Governor Gavin Newsom's press office criticized the podcast, posting on X, quote, "There's a mass shooter still on the loose, while Keystone Kash's defunded FBI can't catch him. But good to know he's got time to hop on a taxpayer-funded private jet to record a podcast with his girlfriend."
Breaking Point host, former co-host of Rising Saga and Jetty, wrote on X, "I know it's stupid, but I just can't get over the Kash interview with his girlfriend while the Brown manhunt is happening. It truly is one of the craziest and most narcissistic and ridiculous things I've ever seen in Washington." I don't always agree with Sagar, but I definitely do on this one. On Tuesday, investigators released an enhanced photo of the suspect that was taken around 2 p.m. Saturday, hours before the attack. The FBI says the suspect's approximately 5'8" with a stocky build and is offering a $50,000 reward. The shooting left 2 students dead, 9 others injured at Brown University in Providence. So this guy's still at large. And look, I know they taped the podcast before this, so the optics are bad because Kash should be running the FBI. Look, you got to find the shooter. The information they've given about this attack is not a lot right now. I've heard some reports that he shouted something, perhaps Islamic something as he was doing it, but that's not been confirmed. They should know. It's not been released. I don't know what's going on. I assume they will catch the guy in the fullness of time, whatever. But even if there was nothing going on nationally that was important for the FBI to be focused on,
You don't want to see this
imagine
interview?
that. What a stupid interview.
What do you mean? You just got engaged. People want to celebrate their engagement.
They're not engaged. It's his
they're not
girlfriend.
engaged?
No.
Oh, I
it's
thought it was
his
an
girlfriend.
Because there were a lot of political people that got engaged over the weekend. Yes, we didn't talk
It's
about.
just his girlfriend. That is a key difference. Yeah.
Okay, I was
Just his
confused.
I mean, I don't want to understate the importance of
yes,
their
it's very
relationship,
important.
but it's weird at this moment of important FBI. The FBI's got to be doing things, and it's a fluff interview, and it's really because some right-wing people or left-wing people, I don't know who, internet people have seized on the idea that she's like, I think the term is a honeypot, like she's a foreign agent, that she's an Israeli agent or something, and
those questions.
which is probably not true, and there's no evidence for it, but is it so? It's like she was offended that people think that, and so they're gonna do an entire interview so that his girlfriend can mute some of the online criticism of her.
I think that
what a stupid. It's kind of like a try-hard thing.
But if anybody else maybe had this unfortunate timing of an interview come out, I think maybe they would have gotten a pass. But with Kash Patel and just looking at the last few months, I mean, people look at him and say, you dropped the ball in the Charlie Kirk incident. You put on your FBI jacket or borrowed someone's before you even stepped foot on the campus to make sure things were okay. He thinks he's like a pundit for TV as opposed to doing his job as the FBI director. He comes to the forefront in Washington after the National Guard members were shooting, saying some ambiguous information that was not being reported otherwise, confusing reporters. I mean, it's just like,
can I admit,
dude,
something?
you have to do your job.
I'm gonna admit,
you don't have to be a pundit.
I now hate him. This is the last straw. This is the absolute
I mean, it's just
last straw.
like, and you want to, the thing is like people.
This is so bumbling.
Some people don't care about
If
this
you
at
just
all.
want to be on a podcast all the time, then go start a podcast.
But some people want to find
He can take my
personality
job.
traits.
I'll be the FBI director, and I'm going to shut down all the illegitimate functions and fire all the useless people. Let's switch jobs. I don't even really want to do the FBI job, but he really doesn't want to do it. He wants my job.
And that's why people.
Him and Sagar can switch.
When he was testifying to the Senate, I remember people were like, on the Democratic side, were like, "You're about to lose your job, so just be quiet." And
we should have known when he was on with Joe Rogan, when Elon and Trump started feuding, and Rogan was like, "What about all this Epstein file stuff?" And Kash was like, "I don't know, that's above my pay grade." It's literally
Your
not,
pay
man.
grade.
It's your job. I can't with this anymore. He's got to go.
Hands in the air.
That does it for us on Rising Live for today. Thanks so much for watching, and look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today, if I can speak. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so that you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can find podcasts. And we'll be back tomorrow. See you then.